My name's Hannah and I work as a recruitment consultant. I was living in Australia at the time and I actually went to go see a recruiter about him getting me a job, and we sat and kind of had a chat about what I liked and what I didn't like and what I was looking for in my next role. And he turned around and was like, I've got a job for you, but it's probably not what you're thinking about. Why don't you come and work for me and I'll teach you how to be a recruiter. So I was there for about 9-10 months. And then my next role was internal recruitment, so it's slightly different to agency, and that was for G4S. So I went and worked for them and recruited front of house and security staff into their global accounts. So it was companies like Google, Facebook, Snapchat, so some really cool brands. My next role, which was another internal role, we looked at not only the roles that we had on at the moment, we looked at when we found that most of the salespeople handed in their notice, so when there was the highest volume of recruitment, and was there a reason for there being that high volume, and if so, what could we do to kind of prep for that time of the year. And let's look at the characteristics of the high performers and the low performers, and is there a common denominator between those high performers, and so how can we, I guess, create a profile of the perfect person and then look for that in our recruitment in the future. So it was really exciting. That was probably one of my favourite roles because it was not just fill-in vacancies, it was looking at the wider area of recruitment and looking at, you know, although it was all linked to recruitment, it was, are our hiring managers doing best practice interview techniques, and are we looking at the aftercare of these people once they've signed a contract, and are we making sure that they're ticking every box to pass their probation, and if not, what can we do to make sure that they are, and how can we kind of get the best out of these new people so that they keep working their way up the career ladder. And then my 2-year visa was up in Australia, so I moved home, and I went through a rec to rec when I moved home, so it's a recruiter that recruits recruiters. I went back into agency, and that's the role that I'm in now, so that's working in London, and it's working, I still do marketing and communications recruitment because that's kind of what I've always done. So I've just followed that pathway the whole way through, and I do it into FMCG companies, retail, media. Agency, you're working with a huge range of clients. You go out and you find those clients based on the specific area that you recruit in. So you relationship build with those clients. You'll often find that they're working with a lot of other agencies as well, so it's a bit of a, I guess, race against the clock to see who can fill that role the first. If you work in-house, you're working for one company specifically and you're doing all their recruitment within that company, so you're sort of sitting within the HR team. No, it's literally, you can start from resourcing roles. So resourcing roles, you wouldn't necessarily get given specific clients for you to work on. You'd be working alongside someone who has roles, and you would be phoning the candidates and asking if they're interested in the roles and kind of finding people for those roles to help someone else out. And that's kind of the way you go in. You then start as a resourcer and then you become a recruitment consultant. But no, you don't need any specific qualifications. I think it's more personality that makes a difference in recruitment. I did French, German, geography, drama. Drama was one, definitely. I think that helped, just purely because of, from a confidence point of view, I think, as I said, you know, you've got to be prepared to have those conversations with people. You've got to kind of be prepared to be thinking on the spot and that sort of thing. So I think that helps in terms of confidence. At A-level, I did English, French and business studies. Business, I think, was definitely one that helped, just purely because I think if you understand how a business works and the different areas of a business and how they all work together to make that business moving forward, it helps you in terms of your recruitment. If you're working internally, you've got to understand every area of a business, because when I was although I predominantly recruit in marketing and communications, if I was working internally, I'd have to recruit the finance roles and the HR roles, and that's not necessarily something that I would know about. So I think having an understanding of a business as a whole and how it all works together definitely helps. English is always useful. I think, you're writing job ads and things like that. So for me, I don't know if it's maybe because I work in the industry, but I hate job ads when you read them and there's typos and things like that, just because I think if you can't even write the job ad properly, it makes me not want to apply for it. So I think from an English point of view, that's always useful. And then my degree was business as well, so I did international business. So again, I guess same as A-level. A lot of people end up going on and doing further qualifications. So a lot of people, if you go in-house, end up doing a CIPD or something like that. So there are other qualifications you can get, things like that within recruitment. I previously worked as a brand manager at a company, and that was an FMCG company, which is now what I recruit in. I also previously worked in an HR role. It was part of an internship at uni. So I did a year internship where I worked in a role that sat within the HR team. So I got a bit more of an understanding about the world of recruitment and how that fitted in and the importance of HR. So I think they definitely both helped, just because it gave me a clearer understanding of day-to-day business life, and also I was fortunate enough to fall into a recruitment role, recruiting roles I'd previously worked in, so that definitely helped. Tenacity, definitely. That's literally the biggest one. You're going to get a lot of no's, so you got to be prepared for them, have a bit of a thick skin. I think there's a tendency when you first start for it to really affect you when someone's a bit horrible to you on the phone or a bit rude or says no, whereas you just need to brush it off and kind of on to the next one. You have to be confident, obviously. You're putting yourself in situations where you're going out and meeting people that you've never spoken to before, and often, you're talking about a role that might be a lot higher than a role you've ever recruited for before, and so you are a little bit out of your depth. And I guess there is a little bit of that fake it till you make it. You talk about it like you know what you're talking about, and you have to be prepared to nod along and pretend that you understand it all and retain that information to then be able to go away and find the right person for that role. And whilst as a recruiter, you know that you physically cannot know everything about every role, not all clients think like that. They presume that if you're recruiting for that role that you know everything. And so you do have to have that kind of confidence to sit there and talk about a subject that you perhaps don't know a whole lot about. I think you have to have a bit of a natural sales drive, because you are pushing people, and whilst you have to accept that not everyone's going to take your business, there is also that tendency to kind of don't take no for an answer. You have to be a people person. You're around people all the time, whether that's your team, whether that's your candidates, whether that's your clients, and you're working long hours with those people, so definitely a people person. So recruitment is quite long hours, purely because I guess if you think about when you're talking to a recruiter, you can't talk to them during your work days. So you can talk to them before work, at lunchtime, or after work, which then kind of means that I need to be available before work and after work. So your day probably is a bit skewed and probably not your regular 9 to 5. But I would go into the office probably about 8:30 so that I can catch people for about half an hour before. On a normal day, I sort of split my day, I guess. In the morning, I talk to a lot of my clients, so I try and get them on the phone, any updates about roles we're working on at the moment, anything that's changed overnight. any business development calls, talking to new clients, and then in the afternoon I tend to focus on my candidates. So that's looking at who's applied for the jobs, calling through them all, speaking to any candidates that have come through, using LinkedIn to find new candidates and that sort of thing. So I guess basic level, I tend to sort of split it down the middle and do morning clients, afternoon candidates. So you're writing job ads, you're taking job briefs, finding out what people need qualification-wise, background, day-to-day responsibilities for roles, so that you can create a profile and then find the person to fit that profile. It's a lot of time on the phone. You are speaking to kind of, I guess, widening your network and speaking to other companies, even if they're not recruiting. It's a lot of meeting people as well. So I'm out the office a lot of the time, whether it's sitting having a coffee with potential candidates or going out for a dinner with a client or that sort of thing. A lot of research of the market. So knowing who's got new marketing directors, who's looking to, I don't know, who's been bought by a new company, so is likely going to have a bit of a shift in hierarchy where there might be vacancies or people that are made redundant and are then looking for roles, and, you know, what's going on in the market at the moment, whether that's through just that company in general, whether that's through government legislation, that sort of thing. I think the way that you can be kind of the best at recruitment is knowing your market. A lot of the time you get clients asking you, how do you think this will affect it? Or do you think this is normal for this time of year? And if you can speak competently about it, they're probably more likely to get on board with what you're saying. So I think I spend a lot of time doing research about what's going on in the world. There's sort of websites that I sign up to that send bulletins every morning of things that are going on and kind of the 5 things you need to know this morning. So I do a lot of things like that. I go to a lot of seminars and things like that. I'm signed up to loads of like talks and that sort of thing. But mainly it's just, I have a Google alert and that sort of thing that's just putting it in my inbox, any changes. And I try and do that at a time that's not really affecting my work day, so I'll do it on the train into work or the train home from work and that sort of thing, where I've got time to just sit down and just kind of have a little read about what's going on in the world. My favourite thing is so one of the girls that I recruited, must have been about 18 months ago now, just got a promotion and she told me about it, and then I get this little feeling like, oh my God, I'm so happy because I put her in that job and she's now worked really hard and they recognise that and she's got a promotion. I think that for me is really satisfying, that I've put her in a job that not only she loves, that she's clearly succeeding in. And I think that's kind of where I get my buzz from, knowing that they're going to really like it, and that, you know, and I see things on LinkedIn and things like that where people have been promoted or they've got a new job, and I'm always so happy for them because obviously I've kind of given them that head start. I think that for me is the best part about recruitment. It's long hours. It's definitely the long hours, and I think it's a real roller coaster of a job. You can have really, really good days and you can have really, really bad days where no one's answering the phone, jobs you've been working really hard on have been filled by another agency, and you just kind of, you feel like you're really, you know, struggling uphill. But then there are days where everything goes really right and you pick up new jobs without even trying, and everyone's answering the phone and the perfect candidate falls into your lap and that sort of thing. So it's a real mixed emotions, which is why I think you have to have that hard skin, because you have to kind of know, yes, okay, today's a bit of a bad day, but tomorrow we'll start again and we'll try again. So I think once you get that mentality into your head, that you are going to be working long hours and there are going to be bad days where it seems like everything's fighting against you, I would say they're probably the worst parts about the job. I think normally it tends to be where there's vacancies, and then you learn that industry. I think I was very fortunate in that I fell into marketing and comms, and that's what I'd done before. I guess if there's a vacancy where it does suit your background, whether that's through work you've done before or a personal interest, then they would always try and put you there. But I think it's kind of, I guess, case by case basis, really. The general route is that you go in at sort of an entry-level role as a resourcer, and then you work your way up to a consultant. You can be a senior consultant. You then get to be a team leader, where obviously you're managing your team of people who are doing, you're all doing, I guess, marketing and comms, for example, but you're all doing slightly different areas. And that's kind of, I guess, the easiest way to work your way up. A lot of people do that and then go internal purely because they get a bit nicer hours, and they've kind of found their niche, what they specialise in, and the sort of industries that they're used to, and then go internal and work in a talent acquisition team where they're just working for one company. My advice would be to work in recruitment. I love it. I think it's such a fun job. I really I meet new people every day. I've made so many friends through it. And I think it's probably a role that you wouldn't necessarily think of doing straight away. But I think if you're confident and outgoing and you like meeting new people, then give it a go, would be my advice.